there to Laurie Schwab with the New York Cosmos.
Johnson. Still Johnson. Jones, this looks dangerous for Brisbane Lions. Jones, a good cross. Johnson. Arnold's forward, so's Manus Lamond, still Robbie Slater. Twisting and turning, getting that one across. Lamond! Manus Lamond!
Play on, says the referee. Hayes is onside again. Shot! It's in the net! What a great goal by Graham Hayes!
No call! Score! Salamini for Cole. Cole on the run. Shoots. 2-0.
Lazanovsky with the free kick. Launches a rocket! Trimboli. What vision! Blasts.
Yes!
That's it!
Miljevic.
Beautiful goal! Here's Bozanic. They haven't! They might have won it!
Teammate from Heidelberg United and another local product, Charlie Ankus. How do you feel, Charlie?
A bit nervous, but I think I'll get used to it. Get used to it and really put in 100%.
I'm joined by former Olyroo and youth Socceroo and Sydney Olympic and Newcastle United player, Peter Tsekenis. Peter, welcome.
Thanks, George. Thanks for having me.
No, it's a pleasure, mate. Always love talking football with football people. Little known fact, you obviously, before you went to Sydney Olympic, you were actually at St George as well. Is that right?
Yeah, I was with the St George apprenticeship scheme that Frank Arrock had created with Richard Allegich. And I also debuted for St George as a 17-year-old against South Melbourne Hellas at St George Stadium.
Okay.
So that was the birth of my career in terms of National League.
Oh, very good, very good. All right, we'll get to that. Let's go way back to the start. Born in Australia.
Yeah, born Australia, 4th of August 1973.
Still a baby.
Yeah, still a baby, I reckon. My dad was obviously a supporter of football, being a migrant to Australia, like a lot of us. He supported football and took me down to the local Gladesville United team at when I was 4 or 5 years of age with my sandals. Boys were having a kick around and they said, "Do you want to join in?" And I started my first session with sandals.
Oh, really? How'd you go? Did it last very long?
I can't remember. I can't remember, but I do remember the sandals. And then, I sort of, played for Gladesville United for a few years there, and still got some friends from that time. And from there, my mum's uncle was coaching at Enfield Rovers here in Sydney, and I think it was about the under-10s. So I headed off there and played a couple of seasons at Enfield Rovers. Then
had you got rid of the sandals by this stage?
Yeah, I upgraded to I think volleys.
They were a good beat.
Yeah. So from that point, my mum knew a guy again from the local shops where we had a takeaway shop in Hurstville, and the guy lured me to Kingsgrove Olympic, which I don't think exists anymore. They were just a local team down at Beverly Hills, and the coach was Peter Sarakakis. They call him the general. I spent 2 years there. I had a player in my team called Mark Babbage. You probably know Mark, who's an international as well, and went on and had a great career. Played with me in the Olympics as well.
He did, yeah.
We both played in that team for a couple of years, and that's when really rep football started. There was a St George. We played for the St George Reps on the Sunday. So Saturday was your club, and Sunday in the association was your rep team on a Sunday.
Yeah.
And that was sort of around the 11s and 12s. And we're testing my memory now, mate. yeah, from that point, from the reps, they started to obviously lure the rep teams the New South Wales representative teams from 13. I think it went from 13s to 16s. Then they had the senior teams. I missed out the 13s and 14s. 13s, I'd say, just probably wasn't on the radar. 14s, I had a growth spurt and I had issues with my lower back. That's quite common these days as well. Made the side in the under 15 state team. And yeah, things just accelerated from there. Made the apprentices with St George. Got invited to travel with the Institute of Sport, but knocked back the offer to stay at the Institute. Frank Arrock had a big bearing on that. In the meantime, also played New South Wales schoolboys, Australian schoolboys. Had a lot of success, individual success, getting player of the tournament in the state championships and the national championships. Was co-captain in the Australian schoolboys. Tom Samani was the coach at that point. Then once I debuted with St George at the age of 16, 17, that's when St George were pretty much relegated from the competition.
Yeah,
pulled out, and that's when the boyhood club that I supported and followed, Sydney Olympic, came knocking.
Okay, just want to go back to that Frank Garrock situation. You were saying that you had a chance to go to the AIS, and you didn't. Do you want to elaborate? Well, in what way did Frank say?
So what happened?
What was the story behind that?
Yeah, so I was started to be involved in the camps and the Aussie teams, and I had an elite sort of group of players on a list, and I did get an invitation after some state titles to go to the Institute of Sport. But at that time, I started training with Frank Arrock, from 5 to 10 days a week, full pro before school. And being under Frank Arrock, who obviously everyone knows of his profile, I was in a probably a good place at that time in terms of outside the Institute of Sport, and I was living at home.
Yeah,
everything was done for me as a good Greek boy. So the invitation came. I did travel with the Institute of Sport. I did travel with them to Argentina. And then once I came back, I had Frank sat me down and got me involved with the first team at that age. And, it was something I really couldn't knock back at that time, especially being still in the comfort of my own home and still getting that training and that profile and that experience in first team football.
Okay, so you really didn't knock back or lose the playing part of the institute. It was just about the moving into full time.
Yeah, it was basically the scholarship moving into the Institute of Sport. And at that time, 90% of the players, or if not more, were being selected from the Institute of Sport for all national teams.
Yeah, no, that's correct. So obviously that was in the early days when Ron Smith was there.
Correct.
Who else was working with Ron? Was Gary Cole there at that time? Do you recall? Or was...
I think Ron Smith, I think Rocky O'Connor was there. Yeah. It started at that time.
Okay, maybe he was after Gary Cole.
Yeah. So Gary Cole was a little bit earlier. So it was the era of Kevin Muscat, Goran Lozanovsky, Moric, Milicic, all those boys.
Yeah.
That was the group that was there at the time. The guys I grew up with and played in the youth internationals.
Yeah. Okay. So you were saying you're training with St George 5 to 10 times a week. Were you at school? What were you working?
Before school. So we trained before school at St George Stadium.
Yeah.
We used to replace the divots after the weekend's game on the main stadium, and then go outside and train on the outside of St George Stadium. Richard Alagich was one of the other coaches that was there at the time, and there was a couple others that were around, but Frank Garrock was obviously heading that group of players.
How many were in that group?
There was 12.
Okay.
There were 12 apprentices, and then they had some train-ons. And we were. That's when the colts. We had a colt system. So you had, your first grade, your reserves, and your colts.
Yeah.
That's when it was introduced, and we were the colts of St George at that point.
Okay. Out of those bunch of boys there, how many went on and probably played some decent senior soccer?
Not many. A lot went to a certain point and then didn't advance. To be honest, I can't recall anyone that's gone to the next.
So you were the pick of the bunch at that time.
Yeah. Fabio Macalino was probably one that went to youth international with me in the World Youth Cup, and that was probably it. But none of them really went on apart from myself.
Okay. So how much hands-on work did Frank do with you guys?
I did a lot. He did a lot of the morning work. Richard obviously was a big part of it, but Frank was there a lot of the time. And he would also give us a bit of a taste with the reserves and the first team. He used to bring some first team players into training in the evenings as well. And they used to keep a close eye on. It was pretty much, to be honest, it was one of the first real academy style training and real intense training with getting the repetition, time on the ball. It was first of its kind, to be honest. And I believe it's something that should have continued, but obviously lost its way through, the Colts being removed, and then there was only first team football. Then the reserves got removed, and all that sort of disappeared. So I was lucky enough to be involved and take the next step.
Okay. So when you were going and playing your matches and travelling with the AIS, you didn't feel that you were like feeling left behind, or that the standard had dropped? You were keeping up with what was required in terms of what the rest of the boys were doing? Yeah.
So the Institute of Sport, they had a program, and obviously, and no, I didn't feel like I was missing out because I was actually involved with first team football.
Yeah.
Which none of those guys were at the time.
Yeah.
Even today, if you're playing first team football and never been part of the national setup, you're probably going to get a look in because you're playing at that level on a continual basis. So at that time, because I was getting exposed to senior football, and look, Ron Smith continually kept contact with myself and Frank and kept tabs on it because he was responsible for preparing that team to be pretty much one of the national teams going forward.
Of course, yeah. No, they were obviously schooling them in that kind of 2-year bracket of age group of kids together and working through and adding, and maybe one or two would drop off, another two would come in, but they were running a terrific program which we could do a whole show on. I might even do one, but they really knew what they were up to at the IOS, and it was it's an important part of our history.
Yeah, for me, I mean, we can touch on it a little bit, but you can, do a segment. But I think the Institute of Sport, the important thing is that they had in their opinion, and it's all about opinion, but the best players in that age group together, playing, training, eating, doing things on a regular basis together. So everything was, and this is where, national teams, they struggle to bring players together to get that, team performance.
Currently,
and where that was where we were probably well prepared for in the World Youth Championships in the past, and you see results probably tell you or back it that was important. Because you had that team, cohesion, if you like. So because of the majority of the team was together at a lot of the time, that made a huge difference when you went into tournaments or competition.
Yeah. All right. So St George get relegated. You've had a sniff. I think it was 3 appearances as a sub or something like that. So you've had a taste and just enough. And you're clearly well up high on the radar as one of the talented boys, the younger boys going through. So you're not going to get relegated with St George. You're going to find your way through to the NSL. Take us back to exactly what you were saying. Your childhood team.
So obviously, as a Greek boy in Sydney Olympic was a team that obviously that I followed. My dad used to take me to all matches. So when they came knocking, it was one of those moments in your career you look back and with a little bit of pride. And it was a no-brainer for me because really there was I mean, you could say there's option, but there was no option, if that makes sense. It
Yeah,
was
yeah. No, when they
when
come
they-
call and you want to go.
Yeah, I went, and that was when who was the coach? I can't remember the coach was now. It was just after Eddie Thompson. It was the other Scottish guy. I just can't remember his name. I've lost all chain of thought now.
No, it wasn't Nick Hickman, was it?
Yeah, Hickman,
Yeah.
Hickey. Yeah. So Hickey was the coach. The first year I was there, I didn't really get much of a run in the first team, but it was baptism of fire for me. I learnt my trade training with the likes of Robbie Ironside, Andrew Burnell, just to name a few that wouldn't. They test you. You know what I mean? They would test you, and I would be bouncing from pillar to post and just dusted myself off and kept going. And that taught me a lot in that sort of that period, that short period. But I earned the respect of those guys and eventually found myself when Raskopoulos took over the reins. He gave me the real shot at cementing a spot in that team.
No, fair enough. Just going back to what you're watching Olympic over the years as a young kid, who were your heroes in those sites? Who did you really get excited about going to the soccer and watching?
Let me tell you that the most excited part of me going to Olympic was training with Gary Meyer, because the guy had been there for so many years, and just rubbing shoulders the same change room as that guy was phenomenal. But look, Andrew Burnell was, and probably Tim Bredbury at the time, where Tim was scoring a lot of goals, and I've gone into the same change room with these guys, and these guys I was talking about in the classroom, how good it was, and then all of a sudden I'm part of it. So it was pretty surreal looking back at it, but it was a great experience.
Okay. When Rasko started giving you some regular game time, did you take long to find your feet, or did you find that the apprenticeship from St George and what you had been doing at training was making you? Were you well and ready? Were you cooked, or did you still need another?
Yeah. No, look, I was quite solid in when I was used and when I did start. The issue I had, it wasn't an issue, but because we started travelling a lot with the young Socceroos, I missed a lot of games. Okay. So I was in and out. So there was a lot of travel between the age of 17 to 23. Young Socceroos, tours, tournaments, and then the Olyroos just after that. So I was in and out a lot of the time. So when I was there, I got that that first team football experience, and then when I was away, I was in a pro environment, training on a regular basis, international games, just continuously, never stopped.
Okay. Was there, when you were travelling away, playing with the Australian boys, or whatever level of the youth and or the Olyroos, was the standard higher or lower than the National League, or did it vary from time to time? Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
look, at the time, a lot of the boys like Muscat, Goran Lozanovsky, Moric, a lot of these boys were playing already. So they had. So the next step, I just left the Institute of Sport. They started to leave the Institute of Sport from the age of 18. They're already out. So they went to their National League team, South Melbourne, Preston, Sydney United. I was at Olympic. So a lot of us were actually playing. And we were 18, 19, 20 years old. So all those boys were at high level already. Yeah, we were a bit younger. Some needed a little bit more time, but we were all at a very good level. So when you're playing in the National League back then, it was a lot more physical than it is today. Yeah. So you had guys that there were no nonsense. You had to make sure that you didn't dwell on the ball. You need to know how to protect yourself. You had to keep your mouth shut. They earned their respect, and we all learnt from that. And we had a lot of sort of discipline, respect, and with a coach like Les Scheinfeld, the boss, he was real, had that high discipline in us, and that's held us well for all tournaments, because we were a very disciplined side. Even though we had a lot of character and a lot of cheekiness, we were still very disciplined in what we did.
No, absolutely. No. Les ran a tight ship, and if you weren't going to be disciplined and going to toe the team line, you weren't going to last very long.
100%. 100%.
Yeah. All right. So we're leading up to the one of the highlights clearly of your career would have been the 1993 World Youth Championships, and you were always in the frame for that as being part of the select group. Whether you were at the OIS or not, you knew you were going to be part of that. Something drastically wrong would need to happen for you to probably miss out. But what are your memories personally leading into like your expectation before the tournament? What were you thinking it was going to be like?
I really didn't know what to think at the time because I hadn't experienced it. But what held us, looking back on it, what held us in good stead for that competition was all the other tournaments, all the other games and exposure we had to international teams. Like, we had a 3-game tournament against Brazil here in Australia against great opposition. We went to Venezuela and we played another tournament competition. So we already got the taste of what it meant to play international teams and how they did things, and it was a real eye opener. We were a little bit naive when we first went out there, and when we came back, we were smarter. We knew what to expect. We knew how to handle it. It wasn't a shock, And we were, and what it done is the group of boys that we had were very close knit, good friends, and we would go into battle together. If one guy got isolated, we all jumped in. So we weren't going to be intimidated. And we had a bit of intimidation ourselves. So we were pretty intimidating on the park with the players like Kevin Muscat, Craig Moore, myself, and a few others.
Who makes that decision that or sets that tone? Do the players take control of that? Or is that something that like the coaches instill in you and word you up? Or do you guys just take ownership of that?
No, I think because we were together for a long time, living and breathing and sleeping and doing everything, for a long period of time, travelling, being together, and a lot of the boys being at the institute. But I never felt not part of that. And we were always close knit. And when you're close knit, and that just happens automatically. When your teammates, being bullied or whatever it may be, or whatever, and the opposition see that you don't take that, and you've got each other's back, it's very intimidating. And I think it's very important that you have that in any team. And I've learned as a coach, I've taken that aboard, and I've tried to get players or instill in players that you need to have that as a team, because there's a fine line between winning and losing sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. But sometimes teams just don't know. Teams just don't take that on and don't understand it till it's probably too late. Good, successful teams, it comes naturally and clearly with you guys, and I guess having assertive alpha males like your Craig Moores and your Kevin Muscats and yourself in there, that sort of sets a standard. It goes back to probably your training as well with Frank Arup. Frank would have made sure that you were always physically, whether you could handle yourself or not, you would give the impression that you could. Like basically, you're not going to ever back down.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. And that was the old school of the mentality of playing football. The Andrew Burnells and Ironside. And you know what? The honest truth is, it's not only the players; it's the coaching staff who pick the players who have that strength and bring them in, instead of maybe someone who had a little bit more ability but was weak in those other areas that we're talking about. Yeah. And that's important, that they can actually see that in the character and bring him into that environment. So it's sometimes no fluke.
Yeah, which we'll touch on, because obviously you're a current day coach in the NPL. And I want to get back to that point. I'll ask you an important question as we move on in time. But let's stick to the 93. So all right. So expectations were unknown a little bit, obviously, because of first situation. Tournament time, and obviously the hype that was building or not building, you tell me. By the time the tournament started, had your thoughts altered? Had you changed? Were you getting nervous? Again, what was your personal feelings?
It was one of the greatest feelings ever. I mean, I remember it really switched on when we had a lot of media hype. All of a sudden I've got new friends. People are calling me that never called me before. It was brilliant. So there was a lot of, it was great because you started to get that acknowledgement. The real time when it first hit was when we were in the team bus and we were travelling to the ground. And we went past a pub. There's a pub there near the corner of the Sydney Football Stadium that was then at the time, and there was people just standing out, just cheering and having the colours of jerseys on. When we just realised how big this thing was, and that's where it sort of kicked in, and we got the goosebumps and the butterflies, and there's no better feeling for a footballer to have that. And we were blessed that we played in Australia. In front of our home crowd. It was amazing. But that was really the moment that it sort of clicked in on how big this was at the time.
Yeah, it was affecting the mainstream, or the soccer public was out in force and there to support you, and you realise that you're part of that important core. That they're all queuing up in pubs and changing their lifestyles to suit around you, which is probably something you wouldn't have really experienced in the NSL up until that point, not to that level anyway.
Correct. The NSL, when we started to get used to it, it was really the Greek community, the football community, but this was, and yourself, I mean, all Aussies love their sport, and when there's something like this, they were probably a little bit, and then there's some that probably didn't turn up. And when we won that first game, I think the interest doubled overnight. And that was another amazing moment too.
Yeah, winning certainly helps, doesn't it? Gets everyone on board, gets the attention. If it wasn't already fever pitch, the first win obviously helped. How does that then change within the camp? Now you've had a taste, you've had a win, you've had a sniff, you've seen the support that's happening. Does it change your focus? How did the team stay focused? Internally, what was going on?
Yeah, look, I'm really testing the memory again, but I think just by looking back on it, we were grounded by Lee Scheinfeld, the boss. He really grounded us. I got the player of the match in the opening game against Colombia. I got the MasterCard award, and there's all this, and I was in the cab with him on the way back to the team bus because I had to stay back for the interviews. And he turned to me and said, "I thought you did well, but I think you can do better." And that was for me, like, I'm thinking, hang on, I've just got, it was the best thing that happened because it sort of grounded me. And he did the same with the whole squad in the following meetings. And he kept us grounded. And that was, I think there's another sort of quality of his coaching ability, and how he managed things, and how, psychologically he kept us grounded for that sort of remainder period, because it's very easy for a bunch of 18, 20 to 20-year-olds to get ahead of themselves after one win and all the hype and the interest. And he kept us, he tried to keep us cotton-wooled from all that hype from memory. Yeah.
Well, it's a balancing act. He wants you to live, he wants you to build up and use the momentum that's growing within the public circle, but he also wants you to stay focused and not lose focus and get carried away with yourself. So it's a balancing act from a manager's point of view.
Correct.
And obviously he'd been through that in 81 with the home youth championships. So he was experienced, but I'm sure a lot of his career he would have been able to, I guess he was a strong character, all about the discipline. So it's probably the right guy at the right place for that team to have at that time, I guess. Yeah.
100%.
Okay. So just, you've had a man of the match. Just take us through, not so much the team's tournament, just walk us through your tournament as it's going. What's going through your mind from day one, after a couple of games? What do you start to think about? Just because we've got an ego, right? Footballers have an ego. We generally try and compress it when we're in a team environment. We don't talk about ourselves. That's, again, the way we're trained, and the successful guys usually can control that. But there's still an element of ego, or else you wouldn't be playing sport. You wouldn't be trying to be the best that you can. There's got to be some thoughts of Peter Tsekenis, where's this going to take me after this, perhaps? Or did you just remain totally focused? I don't know. You tell me.
No, I'll give you a good story about that. So after the second game, I think it was Russia, we won. And again, I had a reasonably good game. There's agents, there's people, there's people hanging around, circling, and there was whispers within the squad and whatever. But I remember, and which happened to a lot of the players. And it was funny because when we lost to Cameroon in the third game, we needed to win to stay in Sydney. We wanted to stay in Sydney, but we lost.
Yeah.
As we were walking off, Kevin Muscat turned around, and this is where I respect the guy. Even at a young age, he was a great leader. He turned around and said, and I don't want to repeat it, but basically in the words, because there's a lot of swearing, but in the words where guys, stop thinking about what, where you're going, what you're doing, and
who you might be signing for or whatever,
and wake the F up, basically, right? So that stuck in my mind back then, and he was right, because a lot of us were, we're getting interest, and it's normal, right? It's something that did happen, but that was the moment that I remember that happened, that really sort of clicked us back into gear, and Les Scheinflug obviously had a few words in regards to that. They had to manage that as well and try to cotton wool us, because back then there was no social media as there is today. So we were a little bit sort of closed off at times. So apart from the newspapers or the news or what families telling us when they're speaking to us, apart from that, we were pretty much closed up. But that was a moment that Kevin Muscat, I remember it very clearly, that he gave us a bit of a dig on and that was pretty much straight after we were walking off the pitch.
Yeah. So across the board, everyone's happy with Kevin's assessment straight away. The boys accepted that.
Oh, it was. I that was the first time he's really had a dig at the group on the park on the way off, and I for one, I took it on the chin, because I believe that I was probably one of those wrongfully losing a little bit at the time. And now in hindsight, the more I've thought about it over the time, it was 1,000% right. And I think that's why I still respect the guy. And there's no wonder why he was successful as a coach when he was at the Victory.
Yeah, got a great mindset and very disciplined soccer brain and attitude. You move on in the tournament. Where did you go to? You did have to. So
we beat Uruguay in the quarterfinal in Brisbane.
Was that after sudden death? Was that sudden death?
Extra time. So we were 1-0 down. Agostino scored a tremendous header. I was standing right behind him. He was phenomenal in the air. He scored a header to equalise, and we just came home. And in extra time, Jimmy Tsekenis came on, crossed the ball to Carboni, who I think he had his eyes closed. I'll still tell him that. And scored the goal, and it was just ecstasy. It was just unbelievable, because the game ended and we were celebrating.
Yeah, the sudden death rule was applicable then.
Yes, correct.
It's golden goal.
Correct. It was golden goal. So we qualified for the semi-final, which was in Melbourne against Brazil, who we had experience and played with, in preparation leading up. So basically, my memory of that is very simple. I copped I made a tackle on a couple of their players, as I do, and I copped one back. I got a cork on the thigh, and pretty much 5 minutes later, I got corked in the same spot, and I was in massive agony. real pain. At half time came and I was struggling. I was crying from pain, and the boss wouldn't let me. Well, he refused to sub me. So I was getting worked on, and in about 5, 10, maybe 15 minutes in the second half, I just couldn't walk. And everyone that knows me knows that for me not to be able to go on, that means that I'm struggling. And it was 0-0 at the time, and we didn't look like sort of winning, but we didn't look like losing the game either at that point. We made a change. I can't remember what the change was, but obviously it doesn't matter sometimes who it is and where it is. If you make a slight adjustment, it could affect, and it did, and they punished us. But that was my memory of that semi-final. Was disappointing, but yeah, I was in real pain.
There's nothing worse than going off at half time with the corky. Once you've stopped moving and it starts to kick in, it's going to be a good few days before you get any movement back. It's one of those things you'd rather be kicked in the shin or.
Oh yeah, I could probably. I mean, I've played with broken ankles, fractured ankles, but a cork twice in the same spot. That's excruciating pain. So that was and I just once I cooled down at half time and I went back out, there was no way I could continue.
Okay.
That was unfortunate, but that's how it was.
So tell me, you're in Melbourne, you're in the dressing rooms, you've just lost the semi-final. What's the team situation first? How have the boys responded to this?
Yeah, very disappointed. I felt guilt, to be honest. I felt that I let the team down because I couldn't continue, because that's not me. I feel like I given up on them. That's how I felt, and I think that's how all the boys would feel in my position as well. But I think they understood that I'm not the type of person that'll back out or pull out. I was always first in line in the Battle of War. So yeah, that was my feeling. It was very disappointing. But in saying that, we also knew we had a third and fourth playoff against England. So that was something that kept the sort of flame burning, and some motivation to finish off on a positive note. I was in huge doubt for that game. Obviously, it was 3 days later, but the boss. I was ready to just give up, put my hands up, and say I can't play. But the boss got me into the rehab physios 24/7, and I managed to get on the park for the third and fourth playoff.
Yeah, well, he clearly respected you and wanted you to be part of it. So he could have easily said, "Mate, your tournament's over. We'll give someone else in the squad a run," and so be it. But he clearly wanted you to finish it off and go. Is that how you felt?
Yeah, correct. I mean that's it. There's no other reason. I mean, I felt that. I felt that love basically, and I respected it, and I'm glad he did, to be honest, because I was still part of that team that went out there and experienced that. It was an unfortunate result. The couple of incidents there that we got punished, and to a good side, to a good English side, and we lost that game, but. Just the when the game finished, we were satisfied with the application. We were satisfied. We gave everything we had, and for me there was a sense of relief that we weren't an embarrassment to our country, basically.
Yeah. Look, World Cups are not easy to win at any level, which is a proven fact. You went close, and obviously with the momentum of being the home team and having all those things in your favour, and even the golden goal winner would have added to the momentum and to the public interest increasing again another level. You would think that it would get to a point where it couldn't. But I can clearly remember that goal and that game, and you think, well, for the sport, let alone just the tournament, this is going to be an amazing thing. But we've had so many of those moments where we sort of go high and then we take another 2 steps back. That's just Australian soccer. So I don't see it as an opportunity loss, because I don't think World Cups are easy to come by. But at the end of it, was that your final assessment? Where did you think opportunity lost or just a great experience? Where are you at with that?
Definitely a great experience. Definitely an opportunity lost, but I don't think. I mean, and that's football. I mean, things happen in football matches, and you've got to deal with them. And look, I'm proud of our achievement. I'm proud of how we conducted ourselves and how we went out there. We did entertain. We did show that we played for the jersey. We gave 100%. At the end of the day, things could have maybe gone our way here or there, and maybe things would have been different. But that's life. But again, I was proud of being part of that group and still good mates with a lot of those guys. And it was definitely one of the greatest experiences. Just standing out there in the national anthem, for me, that's enough. Representing your country and your families in the grandstand, it's nothing like it.
Okay. And that was the core of that group for the team that was going to go to the 96 Olympics, right?
The core of it was, yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, we'll get to that. So you go back and you start now with less interruptions with travelling for a little while anyway, and you're playing some regular football with Olympic. Is that how it kind of, you finally got to settle down and get into a pattern? And
pretty much. When we weren't travelling and part of the national setup, then obviously we were with our club. Playing. I was playing regularly. I also ended up captaining Sydney Olympic. I think I was about 24, 25. That was obviously after the Olympics, but something that I was proud of. Again, supporting a club, ended up playing with them, and then captaining them. It was like boyhood dream of mine. So that was special to me as well.
Okay, but obviously one eye ahead to the 96 Olympics, because clearly that would have been your next target from a personal point of view.
Yeah, it's Olympic Games. I mean, it's the biggest sporting event in the world. It was. We had the experience of the World Youth Cup. Most of us at this point, I think some of the boys were also playing overseas, and we also brought in a couple of overage players in Horvat and Steve Corica. Were coming, and Rilio Vidma, three of them. Excuse me. So we had three overage players come in. There was a couple of obviously adjustments to the squad. Again, we had a good preparation. We had the qualifiers against Canada, Oceania, and then we played Canada in a home and away.
Yeah.
Where we drew 2-2 in Canada and came home and won, I think 5-0. I think it was, or 5-1 from memory. Which we had a good crowd at Sydney Football Stadium, and again we were exposed to that pressure, that environment. So we were hardened, we were ready for the Olympic Games. But once you go into the village and you all of a sudden it's a different ball game. It's again another great experience of that I'm honoured to be part of.
Yeah, well, you're representing your nation, but you're representing your nation in a sort of different format now. It's not just the boys in camp. You're in it, like you said, you're in the village, rubbing shoulders with so many different athletes. What was that experience like, just from a personal point of view?
We were just a small fish, in a big ocean, because football was, it's not like Kathy Freeman. Kathy Freeman would walk through the village and it's like the whole focus would be there, the cameras would be on it. We'd be walking past and no one would know who we are. We were just a football team, which was okay by me. But it had that different dynamic. I'll be honest, I felt the footballers in the Australian sort of environment was a little bit left out. We weren't really, a big part of the team, or didn't feel part of the bigger picture, the Australian picture, and that's honest truth. For whatever reason, we can all have our opinion on that, but
yeah, of course,
that's how we feel. That's how we felt at the time. But that was okay by us because we didn't need that because we had each other. So we were already, strong in that department. It didn't phase us a bit, but that's just something that looking back on it was a dynamic that I remember. But yeah, I got an injury leading up to early in the preparation when we're based in Miami. I got a rib injury and I was touch and go whether I was going to remain, but they kept me there and did some rehab and got back in contention again, which I was grateful for that too.
Okay. I'm just going to read out some names. Just the context of the story. That was a very, very strong, not under 23 side, a very strong side. Juric, Muscat, Babic, Hayden Fox, Lozanovsky, Ante Moric, Gabby Mendez, Robbie Ennis, yourself, Tiato, Agostino, Viduka, Joe Spiteri. I mean, they are some of the, most famous names in Australian soccer. That's, it's a strong squad.
Yeah. Yeah. When you read them out today, it was different when you read them out.
Of course.
Back in But yeah, definitely at the time, Aurelia Vidmar, Corica, Horvat also joined us. And we were under Eddie Thompson, who was for me one of the most outstanding coaches that I. Very good communicator, good man manager, very good man manager. Got the best out of each player, and he didn't treat them equally. He knew exactly what each player needed to get the best out of them. He also kept it simple, and he put you in a position where you would excel. And we, I did play. We did play for him as a coach, but he just managed us well. As individuals, as a group. Scheinfeld was there as well, which maintained the discipline. But the culture, he created a great culture, enjoyable. Training was enjoyable, very competitive. He didn't take nonsense. He knew exactly where you stood, and it was very clear. Instructions were very clear. There was no confusion on if you didn't do something, you knew. You didn't have to tell you. You knew that was wrong. So for me, he was up there as one of the best.
Clear guidelines, and everyone knew their job. 100%. Pretty simple.
Yeah, it is. I think football's simple. I think we complicate it, to be honest.
Okay. I guess with that much talent around, and again a major tournament, there would have been the situation of agents and potential transfers and all that occurring again as they would normally at a world championship. Maybe because it was the Olympics and there was less access to the football teams. I don't know. You tell me. But was there that same situation again of the personal side of things?
Yeah, in my personal experience, I had some heavy interest sort of in between after the World Youth Cup and into the qualifying process of the Olympics. There was some Greek football and second and third division England, Luton Town, Panathinaikos in Greece. There was a bit of chit chat, but the issue was that if I sort of went that way, and at that time that I would have risked not being part of the qualifiers, which would have put my position in that squad. I believed at that time might have been, in my mind, I was a bit afraid to go that way because I would miss out on selection on the Olympic Games at that point.
Okay, so the Greek clubs at the time, European clubs as well, but generally the Greek clubs weren't keen on players leaving to play for Australia, were they?
No, and they wanted you at the time where there was qualifiers and a big part of what we're doing with the Olympic, and it didn't go. I had to make a decision basically, and my decision was to I want to be part of the Olympic Games. I want to be part of this squad, and then whatever happens at that time. And look, things were different back then. I mean, today, you could pack your bags up and go to any country. Social media keeps you close with your family. Back then, it was daunting. I was very close to my family. I had everything. I had my car, my girlfriend, family at home. Everything was cozy. and to leave that, it's daunting for a young boy. Looking back on it, so it's easier now. And even when you look back at it, there wasn't as many leaving our shores as there are today. It's just so much easier, but it was daunting back then. But that's the decision I made at that time, and I don't regret it.
And probably a good decision for yourself. Otherwise, you'd probably sit here thinking, I regret missing out on the Olympics and whatever. With some of those interests, did you ever have to physically go and do some trials overseas? Did you ever?
No, but that's what I'm saying. The trial periods and all those opportunities were in that I would have had to miss the qualifiers.
Okay. Yeah, all right.
And that was the timing of it. Yeah.
As a preference, looking back though, if you in a perfect world, if you could have balanced, because there's FIFA windows now and there's rules saying players must be released. It has changed considerably, right? But
of course.
In those days it was different. But in a perfect world where you would be released and there'd be no ramifications for leaving your club.
And if I was comfortable with that,
Greece, or would you have gone to Luton? Which one?
I'll probably. Look, probably as a kid that went to Olympic because they came calling. I mean, I'd be silly not to be going to Greece. As a Greek boy, who again idolised Greek football at that time, and understood it and followed it. Definitely would be something. But even. I can't remember Clyde. I think Clyde in Scotland. They showed interest when we went and played them with the Olympic squad, and again, I didn't really have that interest in leaving home, leaving my country. It wasn't in me to do that. Where others, even today, they want to leave at the age of 15. They got this big dream. That wasn't part of my big picture at that time. Maybe now looking at it, I wish I did. But again, I have no regrets. I'm grateful for the career I've had and the experience I've had, to be honest, and where I'm at the moment. So no regrets, but possibly, it's what if, you never know. But again, no regrets.
No. Okay. So we're at the Olympics. The performances weren't too bad, but the results overall didn't look great. So especially looking back now.
Yeah, well, I'll talk you through it. So I lost. So leading up to the first game, I never missed a game basically in the young Socceroos. Never missed any game leading up into the Olympic Games. Any qualifier, always first pick in the 11, always playing. Come first game against France. I did have the rib injury, but I had come good from that and fully fit, ready to go. I lost my spot to Olyroo Vidma, basically, to fit Olyroo Vidma, which was devastating.
Yeah.
Because
he's one of the three older players that came into the squad.
Correct. So they've just come and it felt at the time that we've done all this hard work. I've never let anyone down. I've been part of it the whole time. All of a sudden, overage guy comes and bingo, I've lost my spot. I was devastated at the time. So we played France. I was on the bench, warmed up a couple of times, didn't come on. Tiago got sent off in that game. I think we lost 2-0, I think it might have been 2-0. The players sending off was obviously instrumental to that result. Yeah. It was crucial. They had players like Makaleli and to name a few, Perez, and there was
there were some names.
There was massive names, but we didn't really care at the time. I mean, we know now because we remember them, but at the time it wasn't. We knew them, but it wasn't a massive deal. And then after that, we played Saudi Arabia, and I got the call up. He put me back in the squad, and we happened to win 2-1, and I scored a goal. I don't think I was put in the team to score goals, but I guess it was a bonus that I scored one. Again, that was another memorable moment, scoring that goal. I scored the first. They equalised. Then Viduka scored that memorable backheel.
Crazy backheel, yeah.
Yeah, the backheel, which was crazy. So I was part of that game and that team and scored in that goal in that game. So it was quite memorable. So again, from down in the doghouse to all of a sudden on top of the world again. in the space of 72 hours. So,
Football can have its ups and downs, and there's a classic group. Yeah.
Correct, and that's something that I sort of tried to instill in and I've got a boy that plays now, so I explained to him that what you're feeling is normal, and it's what you do to sort of change it, and how quickly things can change in football. Yeah.
No, that's fair enough. All right, so and then the last game was against Spain, in which, from memory, you were 2-1 up very late into that game. Talk us through that finish.
Okay, so Spain, again, I started that game. We just came out of the blocks. I think it was 2-0, to be honest. It was 2-0 up. We missed. They were very flat at the back. We just caught them every single time. Probably could have scored 4. Second half, again, we had some chances, but I think the crucial time for them was just before halftime. Raul had a free kick to make it 2-1 just before halftime. And at 2-1, most of the second half, we had chances to kill the game off. I put Corica through one, and he missed it. There's a couple other ones that we missed the opportunity, and that's football. And then in the 89th minute, a ball just came across and went under legs, and it was just the most. And we couldn't draw the game, so we had to win. And it just at 89th minute went under someone's legs, and keeper missed it, and it was just the ugliest goal you probably concede in the worst time ever.
Yeah.
And then we just went trying to chase the result. I still think of it. I had a header that I don't know how I got to it, but I got my head to it, and I thought it was going to hit the back of the net, but it didn't. I wish it did. They could have changed things. But yeah, they just went, caught us on the counter and scored in the 92nd or 3rd minute to sort of nail it. And we're talking players in that team that, you can probably look at the team they had that was phenomenal. But we really should have put that to bed, that game, and we didn't. And that was the most heartbreaking time, to be honest, that you knew you had it, but you lost it.
Yeah.
And that was, and that was going to take us to the next step of the Olympic Games, which would have been, again, phenomenal. I don't think we had the team against the opposition to win that tournament. In the World Youth Cup, I think we did. I think in the Olympic Games, I don't think we had the team based on who the opposition was, because there was some really good teams at that time. So, but look, again, great experience. I had a great time. Still, again, have friends from that time, and we still discuss it. But yeah, again, very memorable.
Okay, so it's home, back to Olympic, and concentrate on senior football. And for the next 3 or 4 years, you're consistently playing 25 games a year. So you're churning out the games. You're fit, you're strong, you're going well. Why did it come to an end, and why did you end up at Newcastle?
Look, I did reasonably well. Coaches have different opinions. I think I also, for me, the unfortunate part about not playing full internationals or at a full international level was that was a time where Eddie Thompson sort of stepped back or stepped out or whatever, and then obviously got ill and what happened. But because I was always in his plans, always playing on a regular basis. Yeah. And then at that point, once he stepped out, I never even got an opportunity, which was upsetting. I look back and I think, but as a coach, I understand that everyone's got an opinion of how they want to do things. I was obviously a type of player that Eddie Thompson thought that he could utilise. If you look at his teams, there were players that played that were very similar to the way I played in his sort of way he played. So that was instrumental to why I think that I didn't sort of go to that full international level. So yeah, and then with Sydney Olympic, I was there for a long time, and then obviously coach came in who, for whatever reason, didn't see eye to eye. Then Newcastle put their hand out, and I thought it was a good opportunity for me to go out to another club, being at one club for a long time, and had 4 good years. With Ian Crook, that was there for the majority of that time. Ian Crook and Gary Van Egmond were the 2 coaches there, and thoroughly enjoyed my time there. Had some tough times, but overall some really good times. And in the last season, I got player of the year for the squad. I was offered to come back in the A League, but we can discuss that. That's something that I decided not to at my age and where my family was based and what I was doing at the time. It probably was time to leave that alone.
No, that's fair enough. So Crookie and Van Egmond have both had reasonably good coaching careers. Short-lived in the A League, but they're basically full-time coaches, right? So you get to play and spend a bit of time under them. How different are they to Thompson and Arrock and guys before, and how did they help your game? Or how maybe they were helping you for the future, but being, starting to think like you're going to be coaching at some point? I don't know.
Yeah, at this time, I'm obviously older, a bit more mature, had more experience. Ian Crook and become one of the senior players, where obviously earlier I was one of the younger ones, national team level. But look, Ian Crook and Van Egmond was good cop, bad cop. They worked well together. Crookie used to join in the sessions. He was a quality player. Good guy, very similar to Eddie Thompson. Again, kept it simple. Really enjoyed ourselves. Gary was a little bit more on the discipline side of things. Didn't let things sort of get out of hand and kept a real tight ship as well. So they both worked well together, and I thoroughly enjoyed my time at United, who are now obviously the Jets. And Con, the owner at the time, was quite a character, and he looked after his players, and we had a good group of boys that and we had some success there. Probably unlucky not to get into the final. Missed out where the year that Olympic actually won it, which hurt at that time. But really enjoyed my time at United.
Were you, towards the end of your playing career, were you thinking that you were wanting to get into coaching, or was it something that came up as something at the end of it?
So what happened was, obviously when the National League ended, a lot of the players, they flocked into the Premier League or the state leagues or whatever you want to call it. NPL, which is now, they all flooded that. We all went and played, and we got reasonably good money to continue playing until the A-League setup sort of was reborn. Mm-hmm. I went to Bankstown City Lions as a player. I also was working as an electrician, subcontractor, and something that I used to do. And after 3 games, the coach Andy Papoulias had to go back to his home, which was in Cyprus. And they approached me and said, "Would you like to take over?" And to be honest, I said, okay. There's a good bunch of boys there, and something that I didn't really consider at that time. I knew I wanted to coach. I didn't know how it was going to happen at that point, but that's basically how it sort of fared. And I was player coach for 6 years, and had a lot of success at that club. And I knocked back an A-League offer because I was coaching, playing, and had my work. I was at home. I had young kids. I think it was time for me just not to continue on that dream of just to play A-League.
Yep.
To be honest, I was earning more than I would have been playing A-League anyway, and at home. And I just made the decision. It was a very easy decision.
Yeah, it was a long decision. Lifestyle decision.
Yeah, not to pursue that. I'm not. I don't want to be one of those guys that just drags it on for the sake of it and then make myself look silly. So it was an easy decision, and then obviously just coaching without playing was when I went to Sydney Olympic after my tenure at Bankstown. And again, first year there, we won the double, and this is something that's close to my heart. I've now supported, played, captain and coached the club, my boyhood club. So for me, that's something that stays close to me, that no one can really take away from me, and had success.
Very fulfilling. Just want to take you back to your playing coaching days, and if you can help me out here. I've player coached, and I felt that as a player coach, especially if you're in the midfield or in amongst it, you can have a better impact with players because you're right in the heat of the moment, and it's live and it happens. And if you're constructive and positive and give the right information at the right time, is better than waiting till half time or the end of the game and the player looks at you blankly and they can't even remember the situation. Did you find that was the case? Did you think it was easier to be a player coach in some regards?
I think it had its benefits, but I mean, I was always a leader on the park, so that didn't really change as I was as a player or coach.
Yep.
There was a lot more pressure, a lot more weight on your shoulders when you're on the park, and that takes its toll. But it's also, the success I had was also with my assistant Peter Papoithas, who was my eyes and ears on the sideline. Which, if you don't have that, that was key as well to the whole mix of how we had our success, because you don't see everything as a player. You're focused on the game. You don't see, excuse me, you don't see everything, and that was a huge part. His man management skills as well. I mean, it can backfire on the park if results don't go your way. It's all rosy when you're winning, but when results don't go your way and you're trying to call the shots, players sometimes with egos don't respond well. So we had to manage that.
Okay, well, you would have had so much experience watching the best go at it, right? Frank Arrock, Les Scheinflug, Eddie Thompson. I mean, just in those three alone, there's a school of soccer for you. Add Ron Smith into the mix, you've had the best coaching school that any player could ask for in any country. I don't care what anyone says. If you've played under those four guys and you haven't learned something about the game, there's something seriously wrong with you along the journey. But then you bring your own personality and your own experiences and all the stuff that you put together along the journey and add it to the mix. And obviously you're coaching currently at Marconi. But situations like the Aurelio Vidmar scenario with you,
yep.
At the time, you're not happy with the coach. I don't care what anyone says. Any player that gets left out is never happy and does not agree with the coach, even if he loves that coach.
Good.
In a few days' time, when he picks you again, you've calmed down and you're in love with that coach again because he's picked you, right? That's how fickle we can be. But that's a learning experience for you to use when you become a coach. What do you do in that same situation now with Marconi? Do you bring in a senior player over the top just because he's the senior player and perhaps he earns more, or do you stick with the young guy who's doing the job? What have you learned along the way?
So,
bearing in mind you need to win games too, right?
Yeah, it's fine. Look, club football is a little bit different, right? Club football is different to national team, right? So that was a little bit different. But with me, I'm always, any decision I make, I'm always thinking of what the players are thinking, how a player will react. Any decision I make, I'm conscious of what the fallout will be, and I have to manage that. Now, from the way I operate, and I showed it even this season when we played Apia, I put a 17-year-old to start because he was doing everything right. The guy got suspended in a friendly game that was in that position. He came, he started, he played well, we won the game. It's simple. He starts again. It's a winning team. I don't change winning teams. I spruik to my players, everyone will get an opportunity. Everyone will get an opportunity, and if you take your opportunity, you keep it. So, and I don't change that. And everyone knows that's the way it is, and it doesn't change. So if a senior player is in that predicament, he knows that's how it is. So he's not happy, but he knows it's fair, and that's how we operate. And what it does is the players that are training, that are not part of the squad, feel that at any time, if they earn the spot, that they'll keep it. Because the worst thing is a player thinking, it doesn't matter what I do and how hard I train, or if I play well, don't play well, I probably won't get a look in because this coach doesn't like me. That's the worst feeling. And what that does is creates divide in the team. It creates issues, and that's where you lose your change room. So obviously there's exceptions to the rule sometimes, because but if you do the exceptions to the rule, you've got to explain it and communicate with the players and making sure that they understand why you've done it, and not just think that, you can just do whatever you like because you're the coach, because it's gonna come back to bite you.
No, that's fair enough. Obviously, with COVID and the crazy 2020 that we've had, the season's been interrupted crazily all over Australia, but at least you guys are back to playing now. How have you managed the break, that long break? What was the process of a manager in a part-time environment? What did you have to do from that point of view?
So previous to COVID, I was big on, weighing players, making sure that they're held accountable for their weight, because some players, can go a bit, offside. So on that, so what I did, we kept meeting up on Zoom, just briefing the players where the club's at, where the situations are, making sure everyone was good. We had a good chat, had a good laugh as a group, and our sports trainer was giving them some optional, because we legally couldn't ask them to do anything because they weren't getting paid, but we're giving them optional programs, and also they were sending us in their weights, so we kept tabs on them, giving them programs, and that's the best we could do at that time. So in my head, I'm thinking, if I can have these guys 10-20% better than they would without me doing this, then I'm 10-20% in front when we come back. And the boys came back in reasonable shape, and they were grateful that we kept communication, and it was important that they heard what was happening within the club or in the competition or in general from us as a group, than just the rumours that were circulating. So that was a big part of what we did.
Okay, very good. And now you're back playing. Have you noticed in the few games that you played from the opposition, have the boys come back, and with the amount of limited pre-season that you've had to redo, is the level where you're expecting it to be, or is it still we're still getting somewhere near to what that should be?
Oh, look, there was always going to be improvement because of the situation, but like the first game against Apia, that was a brutal game. Both teams, I mean, you wouldn't think that a lot of these players were on reduced wages and playing for a 11-week competition, which probably, to a lot of people it means nothing. But you wouldn't think so if you saw that game. Both teams weren't letting up, and it was pretty brutal. And I was quite happy with the level of fitness of my team. And I think, even in the second game, even though we didn't get a result, I think we came out of the top. So physically, we showed that we're in a good place. So I had no issues with that, and I think what we did leading up to it, and when we weren't around, I think that had something to do with it, to be honest.
Very good. Now, I mentioned earlier your school of coaching and the names that obviously would have had a huge influence on you, and you're still coaching. You've been coaching for a long time now. Have you got ambitions to take it to another level?
Yeah, look, I think my CV speaks for itself. I think I've had a lot of success in the NPL level, and guys that have had similar success or maybe even less have gone on and coached at the A League, whether it's an assistant or as a head coach, and they've done reasonably well, better than some of the guys that we've brought for massive money from overseas. I think because we understand the landscape of Australian football. We know the players. We've played at that level, and we understand it a little bit more. I think that gives us a bit of a head start. But yeah, to answer your question, I don't publicly announce it, but it's definitely something that I'd love to get an opportunity. Obviously, my kids are a little bit older now. My business is at a good place, so if an opportunity came, I'd definitely be interested. There's no doubt.
Okay. Well, I wish you luck with those endeavours, and hopefully something does come for you in the not too distant future. But I think even if it doesn't, you'll still continue to plough your way through the game, whether it be at NPL level. I'm sure you'll always be involved. If it's in your blood, it's in your blood. That never changes. I just want to have a little bit of fun towards the end here with this hypothetical, what I call the schoolyard five-a-side, because for me, the old schoolyard lunchtime games, they were the most important games because you get bragging rights against your schoolyard enemy for 24 hours. And I always find when I have an argument or a discussion with someone about who's better, Messi or Ronaldo, I always say, well, line them up in the schoolyard. Your pick. Which one do you pick? So we'll have our imaginary five-a-side. You've won the toss.
I pick first.
Yeah, you pick first, and I'll get the leftovers. But
okay.
I'll throw up. You may have already answered this one unknowingly. Goalkeeper. There's two lining up. You got Frank Urich or Gary Meyer.
Gary Meyer.
Okay. Well, I thought you'd answered it.
Nothing against Frank Urich.
No. Frank was a good one. I thought it was a 50-50 bet until you gave me your answer about Gary Meyer earlier. So childhood heroes, there's no competition.
100%.
I agree. All right. Up front. Oh, no, we'll go at the back. Bernal or Djurakovic? Because you played with both.
Different players. I'd have to say Bernal because I mentioned him.
All right.
Birch taught me a lot as a young kid. So for me, I'll say Bernal.
Okay. Now here's two wingers that you played probably a little bit with in your time at Olympic. You've crossed both, and you probably got one at the start of his career, but one at the end. But you'll still have Emerton or Galantis. Emerton or Galantis?
I'll go Brett Emerton.
Okay. Why?
Brett Emerton. I played a lot with him, and he came as a young boy, and I was the captain at that time. So I took him under my wing, and the kid has done phenomenal for himself, and very proud of him, and definitely Brett Emerton.
Yeah, very good. All right. Up front, I've tried to keep it simple. I didn't pick Paducah because it's unfair. Mark will get picked every time. I got a choice of Zlatkos, Aaron Basic or Nastevski.
Again, different players. I'd have them both.
Come on, leave me somewhere.
I see Aaron Basic. I see Aaron Basic a lot, so I've got to say Aaron Basic.
In case you cop it.
Yeah. That's the only reason. But I'd definitely have them both in my team.
All right.
Definitely.
All right. Here's the crunch. The midfielder, central midfielder. Kalina or Catholis?
I've got to say Cat.
Yeah,
I've got to say the Cat.
Not to say Cat, aren't you?
I've got to say the Cat.
Look, both superb players, but the Cat was
definitely great players, but I'd go the Cat.
All right, you've done very well there, and you've still left me some good players. But
right, mate.
There you go. Look, there you go. 5 choices as a coach. You had to make quick decisions. You were right on the spot. It's like you've been doing this forever.
Yeah, you got to know your players. You got to know how you want to play and what they bring to the table, mate. So yeah, that's sometimes it's not only ability and the headliners. It's the rest of it. If you know them personally, what they're about. So
absolutely.
Very important.
Look, mate, I really do appreciate your time. I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy day to spend a little bit of time and having a chat. It's been a pleasure. I want to congratulate you on your playing career, which was superb. congratulate you on your current coaching career, because I don't think it's over, and I think there's a few chapters left to write. I want to thank Greg Stock for helping us arrange the interview, because Stocky does a lot of great work behind the scenes for me, and I do appreciate it. Once again, thank you, and wish you luck going forward, mate.
No worries, mate. Keep up the good work, and appreciate you for having me, mate. Appreciate it.
Anytime.
Thanks.